Hello, YouTube community. Can you hear me? We got gremlins in the works today. If someone's watching live can tell me, can you hear me or not hear me? I'd very, very much appreciate it. There's all sorts going on with the network that runs the stream, which is not happy this morning / this afternoon. So if someone give me a thumbs up and say, yep, we can hear you, or no, you're still on mute, and then we'll get ready to start this stream. Sorry, it's a crap start, but I can't bother to waste 2 minutes of jargon again if you lot can't hear me. So, can you hear me or can't you hear me? Loud and clear. Right, we're good. Okay, at last. Thank you, guys. You can stop putting that. It's much appreciated. Right, for the benefit of those on the audio, you're listening to Arch James, my YouTube live stream, where I welcome questions from the YouTube community. This week brought to you on a Tuesday. I'm probably going to be on a Tuesday for the next few weeks because I can't bother to do 3 live streams on a Friday when there's Friday deadlines, because obviously the deadline stream, and there's also the team news stream for our advanced tier patrons as well. Cheers, Clayton. Thanks, mate. Clayton sending me messages saying he can hear me as well, which is all good. Apologies for those on the audio like, what are you talking about? Nonsense as usual. I did try and start a stream previously and no one could hear me, but it sounds like you can now. So apologies to those on the questions. I'd shut down the stream and restart it. Unfortunately, those I couldn't get to. I am sorry. Throw your questions in. We'll get through as many as we can in the next hour or so. Lee Sherwood is first. Says, would you go Turner or Onana in goal this week? I'm very close to buying Turner. I've already recorded with Rory and Adam for Thursday's Clash of Correspondence, Palace Arsenal. We talk about Turner a little bit because I was fairly certain I'd sell Johnston, and the more I'm thinking about it, I might sell Pickford actually, because the long-term Palace Forest rotation's pretty good. It's also very good Everton Forest shorter term. Longer term, if I was the wildcard not till say December, Palace Forest looks a little bit better. So yeah, there's every chance I'll buy Turner this week possibly, and if I do, he'll start for me over Johnston or Pickford, whichever one I sell. And I think based on what we saw last night, I'm very clear that I'd start Turner over Onana. It's not a slight on Man United necessarily, because they did obviously keep a clean sheet last night. It's Forest at home to Sheff United and Man United go to Tottenham. It's as simple as that really. So yeah, I'd go Turner. Brian McKenna says, with Spurs set up, it struck me that Emerson Royal will get the ball more essentially and often, but despite the goal, he's not very suited to on-the-ball work. In easier games, do you think Porro will play? No, not at the moment. To be totally honest, I think Emerson Royal's absolutely clear of him. And I agree in terms of technical qualities. Is he going to find an incisive pass? No, but his job is to be in there. It's protect defensively in terms of on turnovers, and he doesn't give the ball away much. Like, he's good in terms of in tight spaces and keeping it and giving it to the better players around him. So at the moment, Emerson Royal, I've spoken about this over the last couple of weeks. He understands what's being asked of him in that position way more than Pedro Porro. At the moment, Porro is obviously a far better technical player, but Emerson suits his system much better at the moment. It's not close. So, look, can I tell you now that Porro won't play when we play Sheff United at home in a few weeks as an example? Yeah, sure, he might. But generally speaking, Emerson's going to play, and we've known that for a few weeks. Patrick Flanagan says, hi, James, has City signed Paquetá? Where does he fit in their starting 11? Probably somewhere between 6, 8 and 10, depending on obviously what City's setup is in particular games. But yeah, I think he can play kind of any sort of central position. I think he can go deep line and pick it up off the back 4. I think he can play as a 10. I think he works best as an 8 and not restrict him. His better performances for West Ham over the last few months have been where he's got licence to go and hunt the ball and also go and carry the ball. So yeah, look, City have identified a very good technical player if they end up buying him. Does he fit in? I mean, yeah, it's multiple different roles he can play, and he works his way in there. Is he part of best 11? Not necessarily straight away, as we always say with City players, judge them in year 2, right? FPL MOTD says, was it a pen? I presume that's in relation to the incident at Old Trafford last night. I don't know how anybody would come to the conclusion that it's not. It's clear as day. Clear as day penalty. I can't believe that didn't give it. To be honest, in fairness, nearly every Man United fan opinion I've seen of it also thinks it's a penalty. It's clear as. I don't know how to not give it. I literally don't know what other explanation to give you other than they didn't give it. Interestingly, the VAR official was the same VAR official that didn't give Brighton and Karim Mitoma the penalty at Tottenham that was clear as day quite late in that game back in April as well. So that guy on VAR needs seriously looking at. Nasu says, hey mate, which GWS you think could be an opportunity to use first wildcard? I presume you mean which game weeks. So look, you've obviously got that kind of Liverpool swing around about game week 8, and there's a few others such as Villa come into better fixtures, some enablers like Bournemouth begins to come into good fixtures, for example, and obviously Arsenal, Man City play each other in that same game week. So roundabouts there's one opportunity. Similarly, I think there's a really later one in December around about sort of 15, 16. So Man City will have a blank as well, but they also got good fixtures around that as well. Chelsea, Tottenham, Newcastle have good pretty December runs as well. Whereas perhaps Arsenal, Man Utd, Liverpool might be a bit more difficult from memory. So I've no kind of plan in terms of when it's going to get used. I'm conscious of that Arsenal City fixture in game week 8, and particularly City have tougher fixtures around them. But effectively for me now, I've basically started with one Man City player in Haaland, right? Rico Lewis the second. In terms of Arsenal, I might just hold through it or phase it out. And someone like Saliba is price and always bench it. So if you'd ask me now, like, when do you think your wild card? Probably right towards the end, I should imagine. Probably sort of 15, 16, around about that stage is generally what I've got in mind now, but very prepared around those swings between sort of game week 7 and 9 as well. Brian McKenna says, also tech difficulties and sod law inevitable. Yeah, it happens from sometimes. I'm not a technical expert by any means. Benedict Troy says, hi James, I have Morgan Gibbs White in Sky and was planning to move on to Enzo, but have the funds to get Chilwell. Who would you prefer with captaincy versus Nottm? So I've left myself open where I can get to pretty much any Chelsea player from Gibbs White on Sunday in Sky Fantasy. I'm going to have a think about it, but it might be that Jackson might be the one for me, actually. Up front, yeah. I don't mind Thiago Silva as a shout as well. Just a little bit of consciousness with Enzo that with Casado coming in, there is a suggestion that will free Enzo up more, and we might get a better all-round footballer. He might even become an interesting FPL pick, possibly. For Sky, possibly less interesting. So if I had to make the transfer now, it would probably be Jackson, I think, actually. FPL Gate, he says, Stones and Gabriel owner. With Stones dropping tonight, would you hold the lure of a Chilwell? Reece double up is calling. Yeah, I think so, yeah. Yeah, look, City going to play tomorrow night. There's every expectation that he's going to be back available. Having not played Friday night as well, can he play Wednesday and Saturday? Yeah, sure. There's a reason why you and I wanted to go John Stones in the first place, and it was believed that as a City defender, the way he plays, he can offer something offensively for us. So, okay, it's disappointing, but you've got to ask yourself, do you think he's going to go back up in price? If you think Stones is going to go back up in price, then it's a hold, right? If you think, oh my God, he's losing value and I don't think he'll go back up, then you probably want to ask yourself what he's doing in your team. Gabriel is even clearer for me as a hold. Accept it, right? If he's 4.9 and the run of fixtures Arsenal have got, as long as he's back in the team Monday night, which we think he probably will be, then he'll go back up, I think. So it's a hold. FPL Roberto says, given what we saw in game week 1, would you favour Captain Chilwell over Rashford in game week 3? I'm committed to swinging against Haaland. Wouldn't have much faith in United based on last night's performance. It's difficult to think they could be worse though, and that's worth saying. They'll be delighted to have the points on the board because they certainly didn't deserve them last night. What's alternatives in 3? What about an Arsenal player at home to Fulham, even like a Saka, for example? Probably have more faith in that than the other two you're mentioning. Sure, Chilwell's capable of that hole, but I think it would probably still be an Arsenal player or a Rashford if you wanted to go against Haaland in 3. JHSUFC says, hi James, only one game, but how big of an issue could you see Mount and Bruno having this season against the top sides, and how would you like to see Spurs set up to exploit next week? In terms of Spurs, similar team to weekend, it's absolutely fine. If Manchester United play on Saturday like they played last night, they will get beat. We'll have too much for them tactically in the way that we now play. And it's not to say that United won't improve. As I said, I don't think they can be any much worse than they were last night. They were dreadful, to be totally honest. Wolves, it would have been robbery if Wolves only walked away with a draw. Wolves deserved to win the game. So, yeah, happy for Tottenham to go again. In a weird way, I think as kind of said on yesterday's pod, Brentford, pound for pound, are very organised. I'd almost fancy Tottenham to create chances more against Manchester United than we did against Brentford. Equally, United obviously can damage us and expose us massively, particularly on turnovers, where they've got the speed and the quickness of Rashford that could kill us. I'm not silly. But I think United will need to put someone else in there with Casemiro. I think they've got to. It might be that McTominay plays. It might be that they move Martinez into midfield, maybe. There's a couple of options for them there, subject to... I'm not sure if Martinez had an issue when he came off last night or not. So then they'll need to come up with something different for that game, I think. Because Mount and Fernandes will just end up way too deep, I think, if the game goes tactically as I'd expect, if United lined up in the same way. I don't think they will, by the way. I could see potentially Garnacho coming out of the team, Fernandes possibly playing in a wide position, or maybe even Mount, and United putting an extra body alongside Casemiro. To be honest, I'd be surprised if Ten Hag didn't do that. So with that in mind, I don't know how much we can read off last night, but again, if United did do the same thing, I would expect my team to beat them at the weekend. Nasu says, and those who know me know I'm negative, right? And I'm always pessimistic on Tottenham, and what we saw from the two teams at the weekend, it's the same thing again. I think Tottenham would win. Nasu says, do you think Arsenal changed their system lineup against Palace away? Whether we'll get the likes of Partey inverting, not convinced. I think there's every chance Zinchenko will come back into the team and play possibly sort of 60 to 70 minutes, and they'll do it from that side, and then play perhaps more traditional system with perhaps a Kieran Tierney later in the game, maybe. So that was my instinct. What Arsenal will do is he'll probably revert to doing what we saw primarily last season. So yes, there could be a change. Obviously, the injury to Timber's a real shame. Sounds like it's not confirmed ACL yet. There was definitely ACL damage. They're just trying to get a prognosis on how bad. Obviously, similarly with Emi Buendia, like if it's the worst case, his season could be over. Bentancur suffered the injury in February. We're not expecting him back till sort of October-wise. So you're looking at sort of an 8-9 month period. Grim. But I don't think Arsenal will change wildly. Like in terms of the attacking structure, I think it'll be the same. Bad Company says, hi James, from across the Premier League, pick 2 players you believe have the highest potential to become world class, preferably not both from Brighton. Oh, okay. Potential to become world class. Oh. So world class, I mean that's difficult, right? Do you put someone like Bukayo Saka already in that bracket or not? It might be just a shade underneath, maybe. World class for me is like, if we put a World's 11 together, are you in the conversation to be in that team? I mean, Bukayo Saka's probably close enough to really be in the conversation for that, yes. I feel like that's probably laced towards younger players, maybe. It's got to be some at Chelsea. They've got loads, haven't they? Younger players. Newcastle, maybe. I mean, maybe Isak might be a fair shout to put in that bracket. I think he could become like an elite number 9. I'll say Isak actually as one. I want to pick a Tottenham player and I can't. It's just wrong for me to say like Bissouma or something like that at this stage. And I am drawn to look at. I am very much drawn to look at Brighton players. Let's say Eze. Let's say Eze. Josh Turning said, hey James, went United defence for game week 1 to bench Chilwell, but went Martinez over Varane. Would you bench Martinez this week and move him to Reece James in game week 3, or sell now for a 4.55 million option? No money in the bank. Look, I think for most people, I'm going to make a transfer this week, most likely. I'm probably going to buy Turner, but I'd obviously set up and did something very different to the majority of people in game week 1, so I need to begin to move those funds a little bit quicker. For the majority of people, rolling the transfer is going to be the right answer this week. And I think, to be honest, if there's any doubt, rolling the transfer will be the right answer. It sounds like you almost give yourself better options, Josh, by leaving that the week as well. So, yeah, I'd leave it. Jesus. This is afternoon, James. What are your overall thoughts on Everton's transfer business so far this summer? There's better another forward option in, but who do you think it's enough? So, yeah, maybe something like Che Adams might come back around, maybe. And I thought that was a player they probably should target last year because he's got the work ethic that will work in the Everton system. Obviously, Jack Harrison's done deal for a loan sign. I think that's a good addition because with Everton's midfield, you do struggle to see where the goals are. And I think he's certainly a player who can contribute. So I think that's quite a sensible addition. Yes, they probably do look for another forward. Quite who? There's obviously restriction in terms of how big they can go with money, and that's probably going to define it. Plus, Calvert-Lewin's fitness in the next couple of weeks is going to define a lot as well. Like, can he prove himself where Everton can have trust in him? Probably not. But then whoever comes in possibly isn't going to play if Calvert-Lewin is fit. It's an awkward one, to be totally honest. But yes, I would expect Everton to do something else. Atul Blaji says, hey James, what do you make of the new refereeing rules? Changes on 1, dissent time management, 2, added time in games, 3, VAR only stepping in to overturn an on-field howler. Let's do them one by one. So dissent time management I'm absolutely fine with. I think when you get these new laws introduced, you probably will get quite a flurry of cards, and then people will realise, people who hold the ball or block a free kick will very quickly realise they're just not going to get away with it, and hopefully it will calm down and we'll see less cards going forward in future weeks. In terms of the added time in games, I don't think it's been that bad so far. I mean, what did Brentford Tottenham had 11 minutes in the first half of the weekend, and yet only 4 in the second half, 4 or 5 in the second half, I think, despite quite a number of substitutions. So that one felt quite extreme, but we did have the Mbumo and Romero head clash. We had the VAR for the penalty. We had the VAR on Tottenham's first goal for the offside decision as well. So there was a number of stoppages in that particular game, and I just think now we kind of accept, okay, we're going to get more time for that. So again, I think it will calm down a little bit, hopefully, where teams realise that time wasting is going to be pointless, other than to stop momentum and flow of attacks, which is why I think it will still happen. But if players are getting properly punished, that should also help the added time going forward, where I would hope that it will calm down a little bit. I don't think any of us really want to see sort of 10, 11 minutes added time. That Brentford Tottenham case in the first half was correct, really, the other day. On VAR only stepping in to overturn on-field howlers, I mean, this is just bullshit, because I give you examples. So I use the Brentford Tottenham game again because I mentioned this yesterday. I think Brentford could have had 3 penalties in that game. There was the head clash where Romero heads the back of Mbumo's head, and we'd never deem that sort of thing to be a penalty. I think it could have been given. There was obviously the penalty that was given, and then there was the clash between Vicario and Kevin Sade towards the end of the game, where, to be honest, if they'd given a penalty, I would have had no complaints on that. And yet, to refer to your point about VAR only overturn if it's a howler, like, I think it was a penalty that Brentford were given. I'm absolutely fine with it. Son clips Jensen, but it's soft, and he holds the wrong leg when he goes down as well. So was it enough for him to go down? Probably not. I don't blame the player for doing so. It's absolutely what he should do, because he doesn't get the decision otherwise. So no blame on Jensen for that, but it's soft, right? So the idea that they'll only step in because there's a howler, I mean, that wasn't a howler. Not every single person will think that's a penalty, and yet, interestingly, nearly every person I've seen speak about that incident last night would say it was a penalty. So, yeah, they got to be careful coming out saying we're only going to make decisions if it's a howler, because you've overturned one there, which I think was right to overturn on Sunday against Tottenham, but it's not a howler. Nasser says, do you expect Spurs to bring any more players in? Yes. But a lot of that's dependent on outgoings. So Tottenham, actually, believe it or not, probably have the biggest squad in the league at the moment in terms of numerical numbers. So we've got, I think, in excess of about 35 players at the moment. So a lot of them have got to be sold. There's obviously a wage issue in terms of compliance of FFP, no European football this year. The salaries is not under duress, but Tottenham need to get rid of players who are on salaries, I would say, and players who aren't going to feature. Players like Eric Dyer, they want to move on and stuff. So that's got to be done first, basically. If that can be done, then yes, I think Tottenham will be looking to buy another centre-back and also another central midfield player. I don't think it'll be a lot more than that, to be honest. Dermot Whelan says, thoughts on who Liverpool will try and sign for midfield now? Well, they're probably going to have to go for maybe a little bit of an older age profile. I've mentioned Paulinho a few times over the last couple of weeks, and I just think short-term, for a year or two, that's perfect for Liverpool. Could they themselves look at Tyler Adams, who is injured, admittedly, at Leeds at the moment? Check Decoria, Crystal Palace is another person who's been linked. Tottenham are quite happy to move Pierre-Emile Højbjerg on. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a name that gets mentioned as, oh, he's not good enough for Liverpool. Yeah, fine. But it might do a short-term job while Liverpool, go for a proper target that they want longer term, maybe. So there's a load of names. I don't see things like Tchouameni's been mentioned. Like, I don't see that happening. The word you seem to hear in the press is he's quite happy at Real Madrid. So he probably is going to be something out the box, possibly a player that we haven't heard of from a different league, such as Ligue 1, for example. So they've got to get something. That I do know. Frankie the Gent says, hi James, great bench boost, by the way. Sky Game question. Best Gibbs White transfer after Friday. I have Rodri and Enzo Fernandez. I was thinking Rice or Bissouma. We'll talk about those more on the Sky podcast tomorrow, so I'm not going to talk about it too much now. A preference still for me, I would say, if you've only got one Chelsea player, my preference, Frankie, would be to get a second one, just in case there's a little bit of rotation for the Luton fixture. That would be my preference. I only have Colwill, so my preference at the moment would be to get a second one. I think Bissouma potentially is going to be great. It blocks out a midfield spot, that's all. And obviously Gibbs White to Bissouma works the same, but it might be blocking you something else further down the line. Just be conscious of that. It's not always what's right in front of you. I always say, before you make transfer A, try and understand what's transfer B, i.e. what's the next transfer, and try and work along in terms of your path and your plan if you can. So preference for me currently would still be to get a second Chelsea player with the fixtures they've got coming up. Jesus says, also, you should try pressing the unmute button. It unmutes your mic, I think. That was not the problem, but thank you for the suggestion. Atul Balaji says, what do you think will happen in the Forest Sheffield United game? Harsh to call it a relegation 6-point at this early, but it's a massive game for both, especially given their recent history. It's a more important game for Forest because of what Forest have got afterwards, with trips to Old Trafford, Stamford Bridge, and then the Etihad a couple after that as well. So I think it's a very important game to Forest, and I just think at the moment their home record was pretty good last year. I think until Sheffield United sort themselves out, Forest will probably have too much for them, would be my take at the moment. Harry Scott says, hi James, what did you make of the Martinez halftime substitution, and what would you do with him in Sky? I already own a Nana and Rashford and have no Forest Sheffield cover. Hold him or go for the Friday captaincy. No, I'd be quite strong in my opinion that if you skipped Nottingham Forest Sheffield United, don't add to it now. Because you're only going to want to move that straight on anyway, so that's becoming 2 transfers. The best advice I can give you with Martinez, Harry, is see what happens Saturday in the Tottenham game, and if afterwards it's like, oh Christ, I've got to get rid of him, then move to someone who's playing on the Sunday, and the Chelsea player again is the sensible answer there with that. So yeah, don't do anything rash. I don't know if there might have been an injury problem last night or not. We don't have the info. Maybe Ten Hag will give it to us later in the week. But I'd think go through Saturday, see what happens. And if it looks rough afterwards, move to a Chelsea player on the Sunday. Straightforward. JP says, Mount disaster class thoughts. He's really dropped in quality over the last few years. That's not quite fair. He had a lot of injury issues last year. I agree that, yes, he was largely pretty anonymous last night and didn't particularly play well. But first game, building up fitness after a very injury-interrupted season, I wouldn't say he's had a drop in quality massively in the last couple of years. He was starting for England 2 years ago in the summer, right? JP says, do you think Son will get dropped eventually? He's just been given the captaincy, mate. Antonino Gitto says, hi James, Diaz looked pretty good for Liverpool. Do you think Bruno to Diaz is a bit too knee-jerky? Or do you think Spurs is a potentially better game for the United boys? Yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah. As much as I've said, I think if the two teams line up tactically, Tottenham will probably win, but Tottenham will give United chances. You've seen that in the Brentford game at the weekend, so no, it's a hold. Again, reflect on the podcast I did last week. We spoke about, what if player X doesn't do anything and they've got a more difficult fixture in game week 2? Like, pre-understanding what your thoughts were and what you would do. Is one of the reasons I didn't want to go with Rashford and Fernandes. Was if it was a bad night, I thought it would definitely be most people's eyes come off Fernandes first. So I think generally it's a hold, right? It's Tottenham away, which is a good offensive fixture for the United players. Then it's Forest at home, and then judge it. That would be my take, to be honest. Bruno Fernandes is very capable of recovering that quite quickly and being an asset. So I think hold it. You could go Bruno to Diaz, and no guarantee Diaz even plays, right? JP says O'Neill is a top underrated manager in my eyes. I think, look, a lot of us woke up and have to offer apologies to our Wolves listeners and viewers because I thought they'd be right in the doo-doo this year, and they may still do so. But on what I saw last night, they'll be absolutely fine. They'll be one of the best teams in the bottom half based on what I saw last night. That's there's a counter to that they're going to need to keep players fit because the squad's not big enough, but there was a few outstanding performers last night. Semedo at right back was really good. Really, really impressed with João Gomez in midfield. Cunha looked very dynamic when he was allowed to be deeper and carry the ball forward. Pedro Neto looked more like the Pedro Neto that's been an interest to us over the last couple of years and had him getting linked with moves to clubs such as Arsenal. So lots of positives for Wolves last night. I know it would have been sickener for them, but yeah, there should be step back and go, yeah, really pleased with that. I think that was almost better for them in a weird way than if they'd played rubbish and got a 0-0 Like, there's a lot for Wolves fans to be positive about today. JHSUFC says, who would be preferred option for bench this week? Foden, Jackson, Richarlison, João Pedro. That's rough. I'll based on what I saw last night, maybe João Pedro. It's tough, that. Yeah, that's tough. I mean, you could make a case for any of them. You wouldn't want to bench any of those players as perfect case. You can't make a transfer when you've got those options going into this week, I don't think. From that, tough. Arguably Richarlison, and the reason I say that is I think the others have got more haul potential for this particular week, maybe, but I don't know. Look at some of the chances Wolves had last night. Nick says, now that Kane has left the league, who do you think are the top 2 strikers in the league are? Would assume Haaland would be up there, but intrigued to know who you think is second or possibly first. We had this question yesterday. I think I did it on the advanced tier piece. And I think Rashford and Jesus were the 2 names I said. And it's difficult with Rashford to even include him in there. And Jesus always gets the tag in terms of his goal scoring record thrown at him. But I think at this moment it's probably them. Failing that, it's Isak, arguably. I mean, Watkins is great, don't get me wrong. But to say second best striker in the league, I don't think so. So Rashford, if he plays there, yes, probably. Jesus brings a lot to Arsenal in terms of how he plays tactically. And then probably Isak, I think. Ian PTSD says, hi James, hope you and the family are well. They are, thank you mate. Says, is there any performance from game week 1 that particularly surprised you and or piqued your interest for potential transfers in the upcoming weeks? No, not particularly. And that's again being aware that one game is one game essentially. I suppose the biggest thing probably in terms of change of mind would be, so impressed with Wolves last night. And less impressed, obviously, with Manchester United as a result of that. But in terms of players for a fantasy perspective, no. It probably helps from my perspective, and obviously I've had a fortuitous weekend and most of my players have returned, right? So, no knee-jerking here, mate. Barry Morrison says, hi, James, Onana or Turner and Walker or Bulldog for game week 2. So, I mean, I would play the Manchester City player if you've got, generally speaking, over a Sheff United player. Probably straightforward. And as said, I would pick Turner over Onana. Heather says, Trossard, keep and roll transfer or get rid ASAP. Have Rashford, Saka, Maddison, Diaby 3-5-2. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's more of a one to move probably where you thought he's going to play. It's one of them you can keep. Well, I think he played this time. I'm not sure he does. And Jesus is going to come back eventually soon. Soon enough, let's say. Not for this week, we don't think. And that's only going to make it more complicated. I think that is a move, to be honest, yes. FPL Lighthouse says, hi James, were Wolves just excellent against United last night, or were United just poor? A bit of both. Yeah, it's definitely a bit of both in that. To be honest, there's probably every chance as well that United were shocked, where you set up for what you think you're going to get from an opponent, and because Wolves have produced something very different where they didn't just sit behind the ball, they expressed themselves, played, went for United, were extremely mobile and quick on the counter-attack, that it just shocked United and they couldn't renegotiate, if you will, their tactics from there during the course of the game. So there might be an element of that. If the same fixture happened tomorrow night, United would be better prepared for it, for example. But there's definitely a bit of both. More positive Wolves than negatives United. At the end of the day, United still wins, so deserves some form of credit for that. JP says, how do you envisage Spurs v United game? I've covered that, so I'm going to skip that, but thank you, mate. James Brennan says, hi James, I've got 121 on the second team for Sky Fantasy. We started without Haaland. We'll need to make 2 transfers to get him in. When would I be looking to get him in? Sunday week, James. So, yeah, leave Saturday. If you've got Mo Salah, you can obviously take him on this Saturday. The following week, City play Sheff United on the Sunday. Yep, that's the one. Get him in. Mal done it. Thank you, and to the many others who said yes, they can hear me. That's good. Atul Balaji says, do you think Gary O'Neill could potentially be a better long-term appointment than Lopetegui? Look, I think Lopetegui is a very good manager, and that was one of the real concerns that I thought that he's going to end up going at some point, and obviously concerns in terms of what you'd bring in. What we might have seen last night is a manager bounce, which we didn't, because it's game week 1, we didn't think so much about it. But because it obviously the change in appointment happened last week, it was kind of an effective bounce. So we should consider that. I think Lopetegui is a very good manager. Gary O'Neill is still proving himself, did very well at Bournemouth last year. But it feels like your side looked very energised last night. And I think we have to put that down to the fact that O'Neill's probably come in, and rather than having I need reinforcements, this squad's not good enough, he knows what he's working with and believes in these players. And I think it's just uplifted him. Adam said, had Son in a Sky team, but already considering ditching him, considering how wide he was and the early sub. Thoughts, James, will he always be this wide under Ange? Consider was obviously playing against a back five, which if you look at the games coming up, we probably don't get that from Manchester United. We could get that, but we probably don't. Bournemouth we probably will get a back four. Burnley is a 50-50 now. They obviously played a back five against Man City. Doesn't mean they'll do that against the Tottenham. After that, Sheff United will definitely play a back five. And then you've got games coming up afterwards, such as Arsenal or Liverpool, which is obviously not going to be a back five. So there's splits in terms of that. I also must stress again, Brentford for me, one of the best pound for pound organised teams in the league and a very difficult team to play against. Yes, he was too wide too often for me and needs to come off the touchline more, but it's a work in progress. And I think they want to work situations where they can get him into Maddison's zone and then running in between, right full-back and right centre-back, if you will, or even between central and right-sided centre-back if it's going to be against the back five. That's a work in progress. As said, currently my opinion would be that he's not really an asset at this moment, certainly from an FPL perspective, because Maddison and Richarlison are so much cheaper. In Sky, that's not quite the same case. So, judge how it is against Manchester United. Again, possibly the solution there is to go to a second Chelsea player on the Sunday. You could even have the 2 games of the Chelsea player, and then if you want to get Tottenham coverage, come back on the Saturday after Chelsea play Luton and invest in Maddison or Richarlison instead. Stavros says, hi James, keep Foden or sell for Liverpool midfielder. That's a keep for me at the moment, mate. Monkey Pill says, hi James, thoughts on the game last night? Couldn't you look great for Wolves? Should we be worried about United attacking us? It's kind of covered quite a bit, so I am going to skip that, but thank you very much for the question. Atta wants everyone to smash the like, yeah. That'd be hugely be appreciated, guys. Nigel Waters says, thoughts on Son given Spurs fixtures turn soon? Similar to obviously what I've just answered for someone else. If it's an FPL-laced question, it's a no-go for me at the moment. If you've got, I don't think it's a desperation to sell either. Probably get some more information at the weekend first. And then there's a turn of good fixtures where obviously he has the capability to be explosive, but I don't think you can invest in him new at this stage. Rush Johnson says, hi James, arguments for and against for going no Haaland. Funds can be spread to other big hitters and you'd be beating 90% of the game when he blanks with 2 players getting points. Is this madness? No, it's a way of playing. But how much more are you getting? So if you remove Haaland, do you not just go in Salah? You've only put another 1.5 in the bank. And if you put Salah and Trent in together, how much have you really spread? You've just got coverage of Liverpool instead of, Salah and Trent. What's that equivalent of? That's like Haaland and Trippier, as an example. I mean, as it stands, I know which combination I'd want, personally. So, look, I'm not going to tell anyone that if they want to go against Haaland, go against him. I'm not going to tell anyone anything they don't already know by saying there's obviously a huge risk. If you're going to take him on the captaincy, weeks like this is a very fair argument to go and captain a Mo Salah versus him. Do I want to be without Haaland on a regular basis? No. Also, structure-wise, Ross, if you change your mind and do decide you want to get to Haaland, that becomes quite difficult. So say you're sitting there with, I don't know, let's just say Watkins, Jackson and João Pedro, right? If then you come to a conclusion, oh my God, Haaland's got Sheff United next week, what am I going to do? Right, your sacrifice to get there's got to be pretty big. It's got to be. Basically, whichever forward you sell isn't enough, so you've blocked yourself out of that. So you're either probably going to be in the region of moving a Rashford to like a 4.5 or 5.0, or if you've got Salah there, Salah down to maybe at least sort of like Maddison level or something like that, right? So structure-wise, the safest play right now, honestly, is just to have him. Brendan O'Brien says, nothing wrong with my team, but thinking of a switch from Mitoma to Diaby since he looked so bright. False. Mitoma didn't. I think Brighton beat Wolves 6-0 last time they played them. And I get it. They looked good last night. but I wouldn't be forcing that. It's not a move that I'd consider making right now. It's way more power in, I think, rolling the transfer. David Rice says, thanks to you, James. I bench boosting game week 1 with Leno 12, Anderson 9, Chilwell 7, and Visser 9 points. Total 37 points. Thank you so much for bringing up the idea. I'm ranked in top 200. That's amazing, David. But it's not thanks to me, mate, because I didn't make you pick those players. You picked those players, so well done. Business Cat says, thoughts on Bruno. Did virtually nothing last night. Alternate with Mount on corners, not good. Look, I'm not keen. I've said that for the last couple of weeks. It's repetitive. You're almost better off asking that question to someone who is particularly keen on Bruno Fernandes. But again, as said earlier, I'm not sure I'd be throwing it out this week. What are you throwing it out to? To Diaby, or what are you doing to Maddison? They're playing each other. What are you throwing it out to? I'd give it another game. I think and if you give it one more, I think they're giving it 2 more. If I'd have gone with Fernandes, I'd be sitting there right now thinking, right, I'm going to take in these Tottenham and Nottingham Forest games and then see how it sits afterwards before they go to Arsenal. Tony McBride says, how much importance do you place on chasing price rises early on? Obviously, striking the balance is important. It helps if the players you've got have returned, which I'm in the fortunate case of in terms of most of my players at the moment. But what I would say is, and I think this was the case this time last year as well, that it's easy enough to have a good team, right? Most of us have all got a good team, little variations, but most of us have still got a good team right now. That's not changed. And we haven't suddenly got 102 million in the bank to play with, right? So it depends on the player, right? Let's take a Richarlison, right? Let's say Richarlison scores a hat-trick on Saturday. Okay, really, really unlikely, right? But if Richarlison was to score a hat-trick at the weekend, and then he's got Bournemouth, Burnley, Sheffield United as his next 3, right, he's going to fly with his ownership. And that would probably be one I'd look at and go, right, yeah, I want to carry with this value. And it'll either do well, or if it doesn't, I'll put some money in the bank, and then I can move it on again in game week 6. There are certain other ones where I don't feel the necessity to do that. There's nothing that's happening right now that's made me think, oh my God, I've got to go there. Like Isak is the perfect example, which I discussed yesterday. Like, I'm not chasing that value. It's got Man City this week. It's not that he can't return. I'm just not going to do that. So I think it's probably more in terms of protection rather than chasing the rises. More the concerns possibly about protecting those who may be losing value. And that's where the Fernandes question is going to come in so much, is that probably by the time we get towards the weekend, there will be enough people who will go like Fernandes to Maddison that will make you a little bit nervous about it. I think in most cases it's probably hold your nerve at the moment. Greg Williams says, what to do with Timber? I have no money in the bank and currently have Chilwell, Estupinan and 2 4.0s. Good question. So who's the 2 4.0s? You need to, as I suggested on the pod yesterday, there might be an issue for Baldock. It's just a rumour that I'd heard, which I'm sure Paul Heckingbottom will probably give you the team news before the weekend, and that'll be available on Thursday because they're the Friday night game as well. So if that's one of the ones you've got and your other 4.0 isn't playing this week, then you need to figure out something. I think the sensible solution is probably at this minute for you is to look at a 4.5 defender. So that might be something like taking a chance on Udogie or going now with a Villa player, which doesn't look as appealing as it did. But in terms of actually having to play them this week while you sort the problem out, Everton at home is obviously a good fixture, for example. So it might be that it's a 4.5 option. Has he already lost value, Timber? I think he might. If he hasn't, then I'd be getting on with that and just swapping that straight to Saliba, personally. There's no need to buy, as much with the Gabriel, I wouldn't say, oh, sell. No, not at all. But I wouldn't buy Gabriel at this moment either. It's just buy Saliba. So I'm not sure if to change price or not. If they haven't, I would just do that. I would just get Saliba in. Chris Jargo says, hi, Bud. Your views on Rodri. He develops more continual with Kovacic cover. Could he turn into an asset? I think Rodri very quietly for a little while has been maybe putting his hand up as a potential. But it does feel like, and we've actually had this with Kovacic in the past, where Kovacic's got 2 goals in the first 4 and people are going to go and buy him. And it's like, hang on, he can't really finish. He's not going to get many. And that's the case for Rodri as well. That it's a little bit different in the sense that because he plays regularly for City and just by virtue of that, he's a threat at set pieces. He's got a long range strike on him. he can always play the assist in terms of the final pass before the goal scored. So he will tick over a little bit. Longer term, how do you suddenly feel if you go down that route and it's like, oh my God, I do want to get Foden and Stones? You're giving yourself a problem. So that's why I still think you're better off considering alternatives, even at that same value than Rodri as it stands. Joseph Robinson says, James, it is such a good job your wife did not give birth to twins. Poor little Heung-min would have gotten terrorised and bullied once he started big school. I don't know why that is, Joseph, but thanks for the comment. Cheers. Marsh says, afternoon, mate. Hope you're well. Only decision for me is Turner at home to Sheffield United or Flecken away to Fulham. Both teams look goal shy. I played a home fixture with a better keeper. It's just a case that Forest's first game's against Sheffield United. Not first game, but the game at the weekend is against them. Yeah, it'd be Turner for me. Beth Media says, hi James, you mentioned some concerns with Vicario. What worries you the most? I thought he looked really nervous. We'll still need some convincing with him. All of it. Literally every aspect of his goalkeeping is a concern for me at the moment. Not to the point where I go, oh my God, just shit, you're terrible. I just, when I spoke about him a couple of weeks ago, I said, look, I haven't been able to judge him on his distribution because the teams been playing have given him no opportunity to do that. His distribution looks a little bit uncomfortable for me when he's going longer, it's an improvement on Loris, but it's not to the level that I'd want it to be. I think his shot stopping is a major concern, particularly ones that are actually close and low to his body. He almost comes across like the more difficult saves he might look really good at. In terms of his ownership of the area, that's still to be confirmed. I think that I've got a lot of concerns there at the moment in terms of if he's going to be good enough. Marsh says, even in a world of football Twitter, I've not seen a single person try and claim it wasn't a penalty last night. Yeah. Sweet Blue says, if you were Harry Maguire, how much of the remaining contract with Manchester United would you ask for to leave to West Ham? Harry Maguire is entitled to try and ask for whatever best deal he can get for himself and his family. I don't know the ins and outs of the contract situation of what he is entitled to if Manchester United are trying to sell him, or if he's entitled to anything. I have no idea. But he does as an individual. If he believes he's entitled to something, has every right to ask for it, is what I would say. Luke Dewar says, hi mate, thanks for the advice to play it your way. I bench boosted him sitting in top 100. I'm thinking wildcard off Trent and Jota or Salah and City defender. I'm not keen on wildcards this week, guys. I'll be very honest. It just feels like I want to get Liverpool as quick as possible. And the reality is just stop and look at your team and ask yourself, do you have a bad team? Now, considering how you've performed this week, Luke, I'm going to be absolutely fairly certain that your team's fine. And you don't need to wildcard. Honestly, that would be my take. If you're in the top 100, you must have a lot of the coverage of the players that have done really well this week. And yeah, sure, we'd all love to have Salah and Trent and perhaps a third Liverpool player in our team this week, but it's not going to work. And this week's going to be a bit harder. And then next week comes back around again where Liverpool go to Newcastle and it looks a bit better again. So no, I'm not keen on those wildcarding now unless somebody's truly had horrific luck with, Timber, Gabriel, Stones, a few other, I want to get rid of Fernandes. Loads of these things. There needs to be 6 or 7 of them, I think, to even consider it. 1986 PM says, hi James, looking forward to another season of excellent content. Question, I have 3.5 in the bank and contemplating moving from Rashford to Salah for game week 2 before downgrading to another mid-force. If you've got the money in the bank, you can make the transfer for free. I can't think of a reason why I'd say no, don't do it. Other than just ask yourself, right, what happens this week? If Mo plays Bournemouth, he blanks, he disappoints, and then it's Newcastle away and Villa at home, what do you want to do? That's all. Consider just to look ahead, that's all. But on the face of it, if you can get Mo Salah for a free transfer, then I think generally speaking, do it. FPL Sponge says, after Gary O'Neill getting a lot off the Wolves side last night, I think it means getting a lot out of the Wolves side last night. Do you think the Bournemouth board are having any buyer's remorse on chasing the upside with Iraola? No, not at all. They've changed strategy of what they're trying to do. They're going to try and obviously play a different brand of football, which because of the fixtures they've got, it's probably going to take a while before you see the fruits of that. But I think, no, that's fine. I don't think anyone at Bournemouth will be having regrets, mate. Philip C says, bench one and Mbumo, Pedro or Martinelli. Thanks. Yikes again. That's rough. Uh, tempted to say Mbumo, but he's under pens as well, isn't he? Gosh, it's not good. I'm going to say Mbumo. God, that's rough. I wouldn't be comfortable benching Martinelli in any game, I don't think. Nalanya says Bruno to Maddison this week or next week. I covered that, so I'm going to skip. But thank you. For me, it's a wait. Noel Brennan says, hi, I got 98 with... he's going to tell me the whole team. He says, am I stupid? Love your content. Cheers, thanks. Basically, long and short of it, he's saying urge to wildcard. No, as covered previously. Wax says, hi James, what's the schedule for Sky Fantasy Football? Best of luck this season. Every Wednesday we'll be playing at Sky FF. That's the plan, mate. I can't promise you every Wednesday during the season, but yeah, that's the regular plan, mate. Dylan Ferner Rose says, hi James, great to have these back. Would you play Isak or Douglas Luiz this week? Cheers, my friend. I'll play Isak. Yeah, if you got him, play him. What if Newcastle go there, put on a counter-attacking masterclass and win 2 or 3-0? Like, I'd want a bit of Isak under that, I think. Ben Johnson says, I'm torn between doing Bruno to Maddison or Gabriel to James. Oh, sorry. I think Gabriel Jesus. Sorry. Gabriel at the back to Reece James. It's roll for me, mate. Roll. Mark B says, hi James, wondering your thoughts on a week 3 bench boost as all the matches seem good and I'll have 2 transfers banked. I don't hate it, but just planning for that's rough. And a few people were suggesting it in pre-season. It's just little things like, you know, they're going to change in your mind. Like everybody this morning is like, I want to get rid of Bruno and stuff like that. And they've obviously got a great fixture in game week 3 at home to Nottingham Forest. So, yes, I'd looked at it as a potential alternative. I think it was close enough for me that the right thing to do was just to pull the trigger in game week 1 on it. Yes, the fixtures are good, subject to obviously what players you have. You've got to land correctly, and I think you've got to be prepared to do what I was prepared to do last week and say, right, well, I might need to abort. Admittedly, I ended up reverting to a plan B situation where I did it at the weekend, but I think you got to know what your plan Bs are to still continue, and there's another weekend of football here where stuff might change your opinion or you might pick up injuries. It's difficult. You're at a stage now where it's almost like you're wildcarding into that later season bench boost. And you don't need, it's not like late in the season, say if you wildcard in 35 for a game week 37 bench boost, right, you've committed because there isn't an alternative to what you're going to do. This stage of the season, if it doesn't look good, you can abort quite clearly. Tom Johnson says, what are your thoughts on Gabriel to Rico Henry? Only have Udogie as bench cover this week. You don't mind that. I mean, Brentford's fixtures up to trip to Old Trafford game week 8 pretty good, bar the trip to Newcastle in game week 5. So yeah, I think that's reasonable. He's great. I really like Rico Henry. A real fan of his as an actual footballer. As an FPL asset, yeah, there's possibility. I wouldn't expect massive, but then you're not from a 4.5 defender anyway. There's no reason to think he won't start the majority of games. So yeah, I think that's perfectly reasonable. But I'm not sure I'd do it this week. Like, they are away to Fulham this weekend. What was there? 10 goals in the 2 games between the 2 teams last year. So, I mean, Udogie's fine to play this weekend. It's probably conflicting because you've probably got something United offensively as well, which I understand. But is Henry definitely a better pick than Udogie to start this week? And it's close. So, again, it's probably a roll. But I like Henry as an option. John Cale says, afternoon, James. What were your thoughts on Udogie's Prem debuts? No, there were promising signs. Yeah, I'm very high on him as a player. He's super talent. He doesn't look as young as he is in terms of his athletic characteristics or even the way he plays. He looks like a man who's ready to play at this level. So, yeah, very pleased for him because we've had a left-back issue since Danny Rose got injured at Sunderland in January 2017. So very, very pleased with what I've seen with him so far. Bet1604 says, hi James, after the first couple of weeks, who do you think will come top of the championship this year? I think Leicester's probably the safe call to say at this moment. Divesh says, do you play FPL draft? Top 3 tips would you suggest for draft? Thanks. I do. I'm in a league with some of our patrons. And I had Haaland first pick. Yeah, lucky me. I never got that lucky doing these before. So I think half of it's waiting on others' mistakes. I think forward thinking in terms of fixtures, so getting ahead. So you ask them, what does this person want to do in a week or two? Can I make that move now, even if it means benching it? So thinking ahead in terms of strategy. It's also dependent how many people you've got in the league, right? Colm Bugler says, hi James, come on, I'm sick of Tottenham taking our players and them doing nothing. Dembele exception to all, but now you're touting Paulinho to Liverpool. It's a joke, people. Well, I haven't taken Paulinho, have I? I don't speak for Liverpool. Pencil says, start Eze or Colwill. Start Eze, mate, even despite the difficult fixture. Tony Woodrow says, he's James. Can't decide between Chilwell and Jackson for Sky Captain Sunday at West Ham. Thoughts, please, sir. I think Jackson, to be honest. I think Chilwell's probably unlikely to hit anything else from a tier perspective. Sure, if he goes off, great. But remember, this is a Sky game. And generally speaking, those type of players are less interested in Sky than they are in FPL. So Jackson is, at the moment, I can't promise it, but that's probably the intended move for me. Zachary Jones says play Onana or Turner. We've done this one, and I'd play Turner over most goalkeepers this week, I think. Relic returns says, hi James, hold, sell or bench. Pickford, Trossard, Garnacho, Mbama. Thanks as always. Sell Trossard because you're going to get the most alternative value out of your transfer, whereas you're moving Garnacho or Mbama to what? Bench Pickford because I think longer term that's absolutely fine. Hold Mbama at the moment and stay with a 3-5-2 structure. Garnacho, can I be honest with you? Like, I've obviously got him. That's possibly the luckiest 3 points I've ever got in fantasy football. I think I was embarrassed to claim that because I don't know how he made it beyond 60 minutes. I think he only made it because he's a youngster and Ten Hag didn't want to kind of just drag him off at half time. It's like a fish out of water. It was awful. It was really, really bad. I've kind of embarrassed to claim those 3 points, to be honest. He had a very difficult game. But what are you moving that to? Mohammed says, James, mind you, if I'm saying keep Mbama, maybe you lined up in a 4-4-2. It's worth saying. In which case, it might be bench Garnacho, play Pickford, maybe in that case. Mohammed says, James, how do you like your steak? Medium. Lastly, what are top 3 worst Spurs games you've been to in your 3 worst Spurs managers? Alright, how long have we got? 3 worst Spurs games ever that I've actually been to. I'm thinking of a few batterings at White Lane. 6-1 by Chelsea, 97-98. 5-0 Liverpool was, wow. 13-14 season. Suarez, Sterling, great team they had. I mean, they bet us 5-0. They could have got 10. Those losing 4-0 away at Southampton, third round of Cup 2003, I think. Rough, freezing cold, lost 4-0, should have lost about 8-0, absolutely destroyed. It was the year, 03, it was the year Southampton got to the final. It was a good team, Southampton, but bloody hell. Those are the real bad beats away from home. I'm sure I didn't go to St James's Park last year. I'm sure that would have been in there. It's the really rough ones where you've just been, even to be honest, Leicester, like Sheff United in the Cup at last season, rough away days, really bad. Worst 3 managers: Christian Gross, George Graham, and Jacques Santini. Clorna Joshua, Diaby confirmed that hype is real about him. He looked a really good player at the weekend. It was a real bright spot for Villa. Timothy Bishop, have Garnacho and Pau Torres need to start one, sell one or both? I'll start Torres at home to Everton is absolutely fine. I know, it looks shambles, but home to Everton, just play him. And roll and give yourself where, it might be that you can get Torres to a 4.0 or a 3.9 even. You can get Garnacho up to maybe a 5.5 afterwards, for example. Yeah, roll and just play Torres, I think. Ben Ayu says, what do you think about the referees who officiate Man Utd Wolves on Monday night being left out of game week 2? I mean, a little bit harsh on who's the referees? Hooper, isn't it? And I actually thought he was probably the best referee in the Premier League last year. I can understand why he didn't give it, because it's just bodies coming together. It's tough. But to actually look at the replay and not give that is unacceptable. So I think we could all understand. We can all say he should have given it, but we can understand why the referee originally on the pitch didn't give it. You've got bodies coming together in a crowd. That's tough. To look at the replay and not give it, it's unacceptable. So, but I guess as a team, they've all faced the punishment, haven't they? So I think it's harsh on who. I'm sure Hooper was the referee. Harvey says, how many points did you end up on now the game week has ended? I finished on 102. Rags 326. Dean is leaving Villa. Carlos Acuna incoming. I've not heard any of that, so I can't discuss any further, mate. Asul Balaji says, now that Rodri is finally getting the recognition he deserves, who is the most underrated City player right now? Could it be Ederson? No. Ederson might be overrated for my money. Underrated. Bernardo Silva. Love him as a player. I think Aki improved massively last year, and I think would still be a shout. There's probably still a bit of stigma of all. He came from Bournemouth. Bernardo Silva is a brilliant player and can play in a number of different positions. They can play in right wing, left wing, false 9, number 10, as a roaming 8, as deep line 6, right alongside Rodri in a double pivot, single pivot on his own. What a player. What a player, Bernardo Silva. Brendan O'Brien says, cheers mate, fair response, appreciate it, you're very welcome. FPL Boy 88 says, I have Perisic as third defender and Pau Torres as fourth. Do I need to replace Perisic? Well, it was interesting that Perisic came on rather than Solomon on Sunday. I was surprised by that, to tell you the truth. I don't think you need to do anything now. Just play Torres this week or leave him ahead of Perisic. Get a little another game of information and then have a look at it next week. Milan Rezavi says, hi James, would Haaland score more goals for Brighton and Man City? Sounds obvious, but that amount of chances Brighton create for their strikers is ridiculous. I covered this question of yours on our advanced tier content yesterday. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't score more. It's very simple, right? If Haaland plays for Brighton or Tottenham or anybody else, right, teams play differently. They play differently. So, no. The right answer is still for Manchester City. Chim says, hi James, just want to say thank you for the bench boost. One shout, had a blast plan in it and it went very well. 101 points, 3k in the world, nicely done. Only down from here, but nice to have the chip out the way too. Said I had a bench of Pickford, Watkins, Anderson, Baldock. Yeah, it's pretty good, mate. Mans Anki Anderson says, who would you captain game with 2? Watkins, Haaland, Saka, Rashford. I'll be on Haaland. My take on it, and I don't own Salah, right? My take on it generally is, I think if you've got Salah, I think do it. And it's easy for me to say do it when I haven't got him. But I think that fixture, there is potential. And it's a tough game for City. But my general outlook at the moment on Manchester City would be, Haaland's at home. If I think he's going to play, don't take the gamble against him. And equally, if he's got an away fixture against a side who, in theory, could be in the battle against relegation, don't take the gamble either. And so therefore, for me, looking at the fixtures, the only one potentially to argue against would be, okay, maybe West Ham away game week 5, or if Wolves show promise on what they did last night in game week 7. Otherwise, Haaland's getting the armband for the weeks coming up. Also, game week 5, the great alternative that week really would have been a Tottenham player. And that's not, I'm going to captain Richarlison instead of Haaland. Like, I don't think I want to do that. Game week 7, Liverpool go to Tottenham, so that's not ideal. Arsenal also have an away game at Bournemouth. Manchester United have Crystal Palace at home. Newcastle played Burnley at home. Maybe an alternative game week 7. Again, I think it's just not one I particularly need to take on. Game week 8's interesting because again, the right alternative would probably be a Tottenham player away to Luton. Manchester United are at home to Brentford. Liverpool go to Brighton. Obviously, Arsenal themselves play Manchester City. Maybe it'd be a Chelsea player away to Burnley. It could be, we will end up captaining Richarlison in game week 5 and game week 8. There you go, you heard it here first. Shani Russell says, for Tim Sherwood to not make the list of worst 3 Spurs managers, I've seen it all, says it all. I don't consider him a Tottenham manager, mate. It was interim, so that's why he's not on the list. Ben Johnson says, who are you benching this week out of Pedro away to Wolves, Gabriel away to Palace, or Cash at home to Everton? It would be Gabriel to bench out that, I think. Upside of Cash at home to Everton, I'd want Pedro. Yeah, you'd want to play. Jay says, hi James, what do you mean when you say Suj is your boss? Does he own the pod or do you just do the content side more? So yes, Suj pays my wages, mate. That's why he's the boss, my friend. Ben M says, hello, hope you're all well. Thanks as always. Have Pickford and Eze 0.5 in the bank. Contemplating Pickford to Onana or Eze to Mitoma Diaby. Any thoughts? Thank you. Right, so with that, Onana's kept a clean sheet last night and a fortuitous one. They've just played Wolves at home, who we went into the season thinking might be the worst defensive team, and now you want to buy Onana. Like, it doesn't make sense. Just stick with Pickford. It feels like a case you've looked at this week now and gone, I don't want to look at Villa away. Right, Onana away to Tottenham is so much better. No, it's not. On Eze, it's a more difficult one. I very much recommend Thursday's Clash of Correspondence, where we speak about it with Rory McLaughlin-Dowd, Palace correspondent. And we said this was a problem for Eze in the sense that he didn't return at the weekend. Mitoma, Mbumo, Barnes, Diaby all returned. It's like, oh God, there's options there. So if you wanted to flip that with Eze playing Arsenal and flip it to Diaby who's playing Everton, like that one makes a lot more sense right now. Similarly, you've missed Mitoma at home to Luton. Okay, I know he's not gone off, but that should have therefore been a start with, I think. So if you want to move Eze to Diaby, fine, but still think the best course of action this week for you, as you've got 0.5 in the bank as well, will be just roll a transfer, mate. And by the way, that Clash of Correspondence for our patrons at Basic Plus tier and above is available now already on Patreon. TDB Seymour says, should I start Turner or Onana this week? We've done that, Turner. Keith Rowley says, great as always, James. Criminal, you don't have more subs. Good luck this season. Thank you very much, you too. Smash a like, hit the sub button if you're in the chat now. And Pasley Bond says, I feel I got it right and so wrong. Double Brighton attack and captain Pedro. Sigh. Well, you've just been a little bit unfortunate there. It's a decent gamble. Right, we'll leave it there, guys. Thanks very much. As said, smash a like, hit the sub button. These Arse Change streams probably will be on a Tuesday when we've got these Friday deadlines over the next few weeks. Sky Fantasy Football tomorrow. Thursday, said Clash of Correspondence, Palace versus Arsenal with Rory and Adam. Friday's likely to be People's Poll podcast. Keep an eye out on Twitter tomorrow, where we'll probably have the vote available or make some sort of announcement about the content on Friday. Obviously, deadline stream for those on YouTube is 5:15 p.m. UK time on Friday. Remember, the deadline is 15 minutes earlier this week at 6:15 p.m. UK time, because the Nottingham Forest Sheffield United game kicks off on Friday night at 7:45 p.m. Thank you very much to all of you who contributed live in the chat and on the stream. Smash a like, and for the benefit of those on the audio, cue music, please, Manchild.